Hello everyone, today I'm sharing with you a TV series based on a novel written by Thomas. This work is part of the series, as the plot involves some gangster elements. That's why we can see a lot of Hong Kong-inspired shots during the filming of the drama, especially in the alleyways of Chinese neighborhoods. Now let's enjoy this work. Ken's boyfriend Din is arrested in a confrontation with a smuggling ring. Both men were unfortunately injured during their escape. In a desperate situation, Din gets hit trying to protect Ken. The two fell off the cliff together. After the incident, although Ken regained consciousness, but his boyfriend Din disappeared in a cliff crash and his life is unknown. As Ken is still being pursued by the police, he could only endure his grief and flee abroad, concealing his name. In the process, Ken continues to improve himself, just so that one day he can avenge the people who hurt him and Din. On this day, Ken stumbles upon a fight on his way to work at the restaurant. He hadn't wanted to get involved. However, the youngest brother beside him saw fit to rush forward, so Ken had to follow suit and work together to meet this unexpected challenge. When they saw their fellow soldiers about to be defeated, they actually pulled out their guns. Just at the crucial moment, when Ken is being terrorized with a raised gun, a stranger appears. He helped resolve the crisis. In the aftermath, staff from the restaurant heard the commotion and arrived. Ken hadn't had time to thank the stranger. The other party left quickly. Ken was the only one left standing in place, full of doubt. After a run-in with another person, Ken can't avoid thinking about his significant other. Then, his mood was once again in the doldrums, even when the owner of the restaurant is concerned about him and wants Ken to get over the loss of his spouse soon. Ken is having trouble accepting this as well. In the dead of night, Ken couldn't sleep. He decided to go out for a walk. He strolled alone through the silent streets, looking up at the stars. He couldn't help but recall his first encounter with Din 7 years ago. At the time, they were participating in a hiking event together. They met each other on a hiking trip. After talking about the traditional Chinese story of the cowherd and the weaving maiden, the two began a beautiful relationship. Together they made many unforgettable memories. The trip was not without its rewards. Ken meets the stranger who had helped him again along the way. During the other person's self-introduction, Ken learned that he was a businessman from Thailand. They then enjoyed the view together under the stars and left separately. Shortly afterward, the remains of a suspected Din were recovered in the mountains of Thailand. Phahon, the only person who knows where Ken is hiding, and Din's brother had come to the restaurant to inform him. However, after telling Ken about Din's funeral, Phahon advises him not to return to Thailand because he's worried that if Ken goes back, he'll attract the attention of his enemies again and thus be in danger. Soon after, however, Ken encounters a group of people stalking him. He also came close to being attacked and killed. Just as his life hangs in the balance, a stranger shows up just in time and saves him. Before losing consciousness, Ken heard the man calling his name urgently. When Ken comes to his senses again, he finds himself in the office of a mysterious consultant. Before he left, he also received a note from the doctor. It contained the same warning to Ken not to return to Thailand so easily as to avoid danger. When Ken returns to the restaurant, he sees that it's a mess. Upon inquiry, he was told that the punks who had been taught a lesson a few days earlier had come to cause trouble. However, they were taken off the scene in one fell swoop thanks to the mysterious man who showed up and helped solve the problem. Shortly after Ken returned, the unknown person threw a cell phone in front of the store. Seeing the video that was taken, it turned out to be the same punks who had taken on the restaurant. They were bound and lynched. Ken later reveals this to Hint and Phahon, but neither of them could identify the men. Hint, in particular, was guessing various names with a puzzled look on his face, but this causes Ken more trouble than it's worth and leaves him feeling helpless. On the other hand, in order for Ken to get over the grief of losing his lover as soon as possible, Dad decides to take back the other store and tells Ken he will support him in realizing his dream of opening a Thai restaurant. On this day, a customer came to the store. He specified that he wanted to sample Thai food. When Ken went to find out what was going on, he was pleasantly surprised to find that the customer was none other than Talu, whom he had met not long ago. Knowing that Talu likes northern cuisine, Ken prepared a special order of northern Thai tendon noodles for him. When Talu tasted the dish, he said he really liked it. Even, he looked at Ken intentionally. It was a little embarrassing for the person who made the dish. However, just as the atmosphere between the two is heating up, Ken's schoolmate shows up and breaks the mood. They were followed by Hint and Phahon. This resulted in Talu having to pay his bill and leave in a hurry. After entertaining Hint and Phahon with dinner, Ken escorted the two to the front of the store. However, just as Hint is about to leave, he gets a phone call. He learns that one of his friends was actually arrested as a suspect. The news made even Ken, who was on the sidelines, feel nervous, despite realizing that fleeing to a foreign country won't get rid of the past and start a new life. But in order to save Hint's friends and fulfill his desire for revenge, Ken made the decision to return that night. with the silent comfort and support of his father, he returned to Thailand. When Ken comes to the temple alone to mourn Din, his presence surprised the family and friends present. At the same time, they upset the villains who, originally, thought he had disappeared. So, after the memorial service, they started planning other actions. During the night, Ken is again attacked by masked men in black. As he is dying, Ken skillfully turns the tables and subdues the man in black. However, the moment he uncovered the other man's helmet, he revealed a horrified expression. Ken eventually lets his opponent escape. In the aftermath, he tells Hint and Phahon what happened to him. In view of the fact that the purpose of the other party was not yet clear, they decided to observe its movements first. Hint is concerned that Ken may be in danger again, so he offers to invite him to temporarily live in his and Phahon's mansion. However, Ken was adamant about continuing to stay at the hotel. So after leaving, Hint and Phahon call their best friend. They ask him to stay and help look after Ken's safety. The next day, Phahon, Hint and Ken go out together. On the way, however, they encountered a car traveling against traffic. In an attempt to avoid it, Phahon accidentally veered off the track and crashed. Just as they fall into a coma and are in danger of being attacked by suspicious characters, Talu immediately appears and stops his opponent. Talu immediately tries to wake up Ken and the other two people in the car. He then personally drove and escorted the three men to safety. As he was saying goodbye, he also looked deep into Ken's eyes. Upon the arrival of the injured trio at Hint's home, Hint and Phahon playfully fight in front of their mother, and Ken walks into Din's room alone. He looks sadly around the room that remained the same, but the people were no longer there. He couldn't help but think of all the good times he had spent with Din. Those lingering memories came back to him like a tidal wave, making him unable to suppress his sadness. To avoid falling into grief again, Ken still refuses Hint's sister's suggestion that she wants him to stay in Din's room. The former sheriff contacted Din's parents, citing progress in the case. He said two of the main suspects in the case have now sadly passed away. All that remains now is the main suspect, identified by the police, who has yet to show up. If anything unforeseen happens to the other person during this time, well, Din's case will likely be closed outright. The next day, Talu offers to invite Ken to dinner. After the meal, they left the hotel together. Since Hint and Phahon were not given any prior notice, when they find out from a friend that Ken got into a stranger's car and left, Hint had an emotional breakdown because he didn't know how he was going to contact Ken, who didn't have a cell phone. Ken is tasked with finding Khan, a former henchman, but maybe the other guy changed his name. So when he asked around the village, people said they had never heard of the name. The two searched through the vast forest. Eventually, they found hope in an isolated home on a nearby river. Ken harbors a silver lining and gathers the courage to walk in alone. He wanted to see if there were any clues. However, he was attacked again as soon as he stepped into the residence. He was being strangled tightly by the throat. Since Ken has been missing for some time, Talu decides to enter the house to look for him. However, as he was about to enter the house, Khan stopped him. Just as Talu is about to leave, he hears Ken's cries for help coming from a short distance away. This causes Khan to flee the scene as soon as things fall apart. After confirming that Ken is safe and sound, Talu follows after him to catch up with Khan. When he arrives, however, he finds that Khan has been shot, and Talu, unarmed, can only watch helplessly as the armed thugs leave. In the moments when he slips into a coma, Ken can't help but have flashbacks. Back then, he and Din traveled together to the mountains to visit the master. However, due to work, Din had to temporarily leave Ken to fulfill his duties. In the process, Din witnesses the involvement of the town mayor in smuggling activities, and his fellow seniors also took bribes to provide cover for the mayor. Originally, the other side tried to persuade Din to look the other way with a hush money payment, but Din stands firm in defense of justice and will never give in to the forces of evil. It was because he secretly recorded the mayor's behavior that he was caught. This led to his subsequent pursuit. When his life was in danger, he hid the evidence among the broken walls near the temple. When Ken woke up, it was late at night. Talu asks Ken about the morning's events. He wants to understand why Ken is being hunted. However, Ken refused to give him any more details. The reason, of course, was to keep him out of trouble for it. The next day, Ken wakes up naturally to find that Talu has not only left a Kelsey good morning note, he also prepared a delicious breakfast for him. After a delicious breakfast and with nothing else to do, Talu invites Ken on a bike ride date with him. The two rode freely through the small mountain town. They explored many of the town's scenic attractions and culinary delights. At lunchtime, the two walked into a restaurant together for a meal. Talu takes Ken for a taste of Din's favorite dishes from yesteryear. It reminds Ken of the good old days. At this opportunity, Ken expresses himself to Talu. After having Din, he has no one else in mind. This statement clearly rejects Talu. After being away for so long, Ken finally remembers to call Hint and the others. So without thinking, He borrowed a cell phone from Talu and dialed his friends. On the other side, Hin receives a call from Ken and immediately accuses Ken of being ungrateful. Luckily, Phahon and his best friend, who were present at the scene, quickly grabbed his cell phone. During the call, they tell Ken about Khan's tragic passing, and they urge Ken to take his life more seriously. Ken then takes Talu to the temple. However, as Ken prepares to introduce Talu to Master, Talu suddenly leaves Ken. He just disappeared out of sight. In order to avoid Master, Talu runs alone to the other side. But the next moment, he's greeted by the mayor of the town, who had personally killed Din, who offers to come up and say hello. In the moments when the two were temporarily separated, Phahon drove the car and brought the crowd to the area. Unexpectedly, they inadvertently witnessed Talu talking and shaking hands with the town mayor. Phahon immediately sensed the anomaly. He quickly moves up and takes the nearby Ken away from Talu. Afterward, he told Ken about it with hint. They warn him to be careful, that Talu is someone close to the mayor. Since Ken doesn't have a cell phone, it's not very easy to contact him. Before taking Ken home, Ken gives him a cell phone, so Ken called his father not far from Hin's house to check in. At a rare family gathering, Din's father accidentally mentions past events that made Ken sentimental. It makes for a heavy heart. Ken left the table before he even got to eat. He went to Din's room alone and fell into a deep grief. Din's mother followed later. She hopes the family can let go of the past and face the future with courage. Din's mother counsels Ken to learn to let go of the pain of the past. He's going to continue on his life's path. In the process, she also pulls out the fire crane flower she saw not too long ago. When she entered Din's room, she gave it to Ken. She hopes that if Ken meets someone better in the future, she wouldn't be opposed to socializing with the rest of Ken's people. It was the fire crane flower, however, that had Ken tossing and turning on his way back, because that's what Din had given Ken as a token of love before he was born. The fact that the two once took a hook and made a promise of love is quite significant. As a result, Ken has mixed feelings and some misgivings about this. To confirm Phahon and Hin's warning, Ken goes to the hotel where Talu is staying. Shortly afterward, Ken was again attacked by this black man, and he was threatened. He will face serious consequences if he remains in Thailand. Talu shows up at the scene of the accident. Soon after Ken is attacked, he asks Ken about his injuries with concern. Ken, on the other hand, doesn't hesitate to fight back. He questions Talu if he was sent by the mayor. However, instead of listening to Talu's explanation, he is impressed by Talu's confession. He frowsy in place, unable to move. After the confession, Ken's mood becomes irritable. On the one hand, he can't get Din out of his mind. On the other hand, he develops conflicting emotions about Talu's confession. And after the last time, the mayor of the town came to discuss the lumber hauling business, Talu started preparing to implement his plan. Hin's sister invites Ken to meet up with her boyfriend who works as a doctor in Korea. They then decided to go to the temple together to pay homage to the Buddha. Fortunately, the car they were traveling in was none other than Talu's. Because of this destiny, we all went to the temple together to worship and make merit. In the evening, they also go to a restaurant to have dinner together and talk about each other's lives. Ken didn't get to savor a few bites of the food though, but shortly after leaving the table, he comes under the notice of Nok, a premeditated madman killer. While Ken is alone, Nok attempts to eliminate him. The intense struggle between the two on the grass outdoors caused quite a commotion. In the midst of this fierce battle, a mysterious black-clad masked man suddenly joined the fray. Even though he managed to beat Nok, still, he lets Nok stumble and flee the scene. When Nok leaves, the black-clad masked man turns his sights on Ken. However, during Ken's fight with the man in black, he suddenly realizes the opponent is wearing an amulet that was once worn on Din. Just in the moment he swayed, the black-clad masked man violently kicked him to the ground. Talu stretches out when he gets home and drifts off into a self-fabricated dream world. In this dream, he had a vision of Ken being deeply in love with him and throwing himself at him. However, good dreams are always short-lived. Talu was overwhelmed with regret after waking up from his dream. Hin's future brother-in-law's clinic had its grand opening on this day. Phahon doesn't hesitate to use every resource at hand to forcefully invite Hin along to congratulate him. Ken, who was supposed to attend the invited event, had to miss it due to an injury he sustained yesterday and his foot discomfort, and he is recuperating well in his own hotel. This scene found its way to the schoolboy, who had not seen him for a long time. He came to offer flowers and to curry favor. The attack on Ken was also known to Din's parents, so they came together and reported Nok's assault to the mayor. The mayor verbalized that he would assist in this matter privately. However, he was dissatisfied with his subordinates in solving problems. Therefore, he asks to give Nok one last chance at night to take care of the man in black as well as Ken. Otherwise, today is the day Nok dies. It seems the mayor still has no intention of letting the Din family go. What kind of insane acts of revenge will he take after that? And how could this sudden appearance of Talu and Din be connected before? We'll see you in the next installment.